Thanks. Hello and welcome back to coverage here at GP Phoenix. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe in the booth with Eduardo Suchgalik, and we're ready for round 13 action. We are significantly down the stretch here in MTG Red Zone. Alexander Corwith is 11-1 with Eldrazi, Tron, so is Bryan Rockenbach, but he is on white-blue control. You see that Bryan has won the die roll and is going to be kicking things off first. And oh boy, no bueno here for Alexander Corwith. He's going to get his first Tron piece. Spreading Seized. And that is, of course, a step in the right direction for Bryan, who has came with these Spreading Seas, and he's ready to go.
Right. Something that just spotted, because of the chromatic star and the land, Bryan would assume that Alexander Corwith is on what it would call regular Tron or mono green Tron, and you would be correct for that. So that is something we're gonna settle. But like for those watching, you are watching white blue control versus I believe it's mono green Tron. He is playing some Dismembers, but otherwise every other card is green, and Dismember is kind of a colorless, color breaking card.
Okay, well we'll get that updated. It is a significantly different approach here, and that makes that Spreading Seas even worse here for Alexander, since it's part of his primary game plan.
Excellent spot, Marshall. And yeah, you can see he would have had natural Tron, but between Spreading Seas and Field of Ruin, Bryan is able to delay Alexander from hitting Tron with consistency, which will allow him to enact his game plan.
And he's going to go for the Field of Ruin right now. Wow, this is just a beating.
Yeah, there's no Tron piece. So Alexander, recognizing this, understands he's not going to be able to hit Tron in time, so he's just going to hit his land drops normally. And Karn on actual 7 mana without Tron, well,
woefully slow.
Yeah, that's not going to get the job done versus some beautiful Jace the Mind Sculptures that hopefully will hit play.
Yeah, cryptic commands and all that stuff waiting for him. So things looking beautiful. You can tell that Bryan was well prepared for this matchup, as he has decimated Alexander's game plan here.
Right. Yeah. And here, that this is why you would play blue-white control, is you believe there would be a lot of big mana decks like these. Essentially, the blue-white control deck is very well set up to have its interaction on the mana base of its opponent, which is exactly where you want to be against a Tron deck. So you're playing Spreading Seas. That's all, like 2 mana Stone Rain cantrip. Field of Ruin replaces itself. And essentially, that's what you're doing. You're just buying time until you can take over with Cryptic Command, Snapcaster into Cryptic, Planeswalkers. And that will be good enough because your opponent is playing essentially a big mana deck, but isn't cheating mana. They're playing fair Magic, so to speak, and blue-white control decks usually throughout Magic's history are very good against decks that just aim to make a lot of mana and play something big down the line. If it was like turn 3, it's different, but because Alexander would have been aiming for now 7 or 8s, I think that means Bryan has quite an edge here. The way that Alexander can kind of take over here is too many Spreading Seas can open up Bryan to an Oblivion Stone, and that's something Bryan needs to watch out for. It's better to Spreading Seas the same Tron land and destroy the others, so that way, at least if the Spreading Seas get killed, then only one of the Tron lands is unlocked.
How big of a deal is Field of Ruin here? My goodness sakes, right? It has a major impact in Modern.
Yeah, I mean, I think the white-blue...
there's no downside for Bryan. I mean, obviously, colorless lands and some tempo, but, it's not like he's down a land in the transaction, and it's devastating for Alexander.
Yeah, and, I mean, you heard John Stern. You might have been around when John Stern was interviewed yesterday, and he was saying, well, I decided to play mono green Tron because I was getting crushed by Field of Ruin, so I decided to play, with 5 basics. And here, Alexander is running 4 basics, because he wants to not automatically lose the Field of Ruin. Getting the Force back means that at least Field of Ruin isn't quite as devastating as it would be, because you can get those basics and at least play a game. That said, we're not that far from Tron. Something like Wormcoil Engine, however, is woefully underpowered compared to this Path to Exile.
That's right. Path to Exile, the perfect answer for this, and I think Bryan's going to be quite happy to see that, as he had that Path to Exile kind of sitting in his hand alongside another one, not looking like there was a ton of targets.
Yeah, but you can see here, Bryan, why running more basics is better. You get more access to, Path to Exile ramping you up. But if Alexander's not searching for a basic here, it probably means that his 2 forests are in hand. That might leave Bryan to believe that his opponent's on green-black Tron, so that's less basic. But if he can correctly identify that Alexander's on mono-green, he can see at least 2 forests in his opponent's hand. So it's like this Path to Exile kind of works as a mini peek. But yeah, at some point, Bryan does have to move. It doesn't have to be big or over the top, but he does have to do something. A Planeswalker to get incremental advantage. Even a Snapcaster Mage attacking a little bit is okay.
I don't know. Doing something's really overrated, man.
Right.
Ooh, how about Strip Mine?
Strip Mine into attacking for 4. I like this classic aggro play. Right there, that is a classic aggro move. The white-blue control deck finally showing some aggression. I really like it. Same time with 6 mana, only Wormcoil Engine is going to be playable. Yeah, there is a path.
And there's no more basics as we saw from that. I called it a Strip Mine.
Yeah.
The Ghost Quarter just destroying Alexander Corwith's plan here in a pretty convincing way. Looks like Serum Visions was a draw step here.
Yeah, Alexander's super unfortunate, by the way. Drawing like two of your basics at least is very bad against white-blue control. For the basics to be good, they kind of have to be in your deck. So ideally, you never draw a basic forest against white-blue because they path you, they Ghost Quarter you, they Field of Ruin you. So you want to make sure those basics are in your deck so you can at least play a game of Magic.
Was that Ugin?
That was Ugin, but we're getting Worldbreaker is good here. You get the cast trigger no matter what, and it really needs Path to Exile to kind of be dealt with permanently.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting actually because Bryan was quite happy to use those paths on the first 2 Wormcoil engines, but he may find himself actually wanting another one.
Yeah, losing the Colonnade here can actually be a cost. He lets it resolve because he has access to Detention Sphere, and only really, as long as he has counter magic up, only Ulamog could really remove it. One thing, Bryan...
A little awkward here. He'd love to have another land, wouldn't he?
Yes, because then he could play Detention Sphere with Cryptic backup, and that's not something that he has access to right now, so that's why you see him passing the turn, although he has an answer to Worldbreaker. His other answer to Worldbreaker, though, is his life total is at 17, so he has time.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can see the difference between like the old black-green Tron list and the mono-green list, specifically in this matchup. I think on black-green, Alexander would have had a lot of trouble. But you can also see that Bryan needed to put pressure at some point, and this is why. Like, eventually, the Tron deck does get to 8 lands because you're putting 0 pressure. Just land drop, land drop, land drop. Here's a Nugan, whatever. Gets countered, I don't really mind.
Like you said, though, you know, what's supposed to happen is Bryan is supposed to play Jace the Mind Sculptor 4 turns ago and have just generated insane advantage in the interim. He just didn't really have a lot going on. And he has built his deck to be quite reactive for what it's worth. You know, he's not super high on win conditions in the deck. He really is looking at trying to finish off the game with cards like Jace and Celestial Colonnade.
Yeah. There's also the Gate in Bryan's hand, which might have been drawn here from the Cryptic or last turn. So I really like here going Detention Sphere, since there's only like one. They usually don't run that many creatures, and you can easily deal with the last Wormcoil at some point.
Well, he's going to still use that life total as a resource.
I don't mind the line of using the life total as a resource. That's usually correct. I'm wondering what is causing him to do that, and I can see a Sphinx's Revelation. So
I see.
For me, Bryan's plan, Sphinx is for 4. So he's going to use, as you say, the life total as a resource, which is a really powerful control line. If you can, in these matchups, like because the Tron deck also doesn't put life total pressure, you can essentially take your time and do something like taking 5 is irrelevant if you can get that Sphinx's 4.
This is getting interesting here as well, Eduardo. We just saw Ancient Stirrings from Alex, and he's going to take Ulamog the Ceaseless Hunger. Now, he's still on 8 mana sources right now. He needs 2 more to be able to cast it. But, you know, you get that cast trigger too, and, like, maybe he starts putting something together.
Indeed. The card that you would be the most excited about, Marshall, by the way?
Yeah.
While we see this Ugin potentially negated.
Yeah, probably going to get negated. But interestingly, he did play a land here as well. So we are now 1 land away from just 10 lands cast Ulamog. What were you going to say?
I was going to mention, Ulamog is not the truest killer. Emrakul the Promised End is.
Ah. You can do a lot of work with that.
Yeah, just sack a fetch land, get nothing.
Right, empty out your hand. How about Sphinx's Revelation for 0?
Yeah, it is a little awkward in the face of something like Supreme Verdict, since no matter what you do, that is going to be good against you. I think here, though, on the Ugin specifically, I would have liked Bryan C committing the Sphinx's Revelation because he has access to Detention Sphere. And Detention Sphering...
just Sphinxing for 2?
No, Sphinxing for 4, and then untap and have the negate up.
Oh, you would have let the Ugin resolve?
Yeah, what was it going to do?
Okay.
Actually, it might unlock Tron with the Spreading Seas. No, there's no tower, so... although those are free power plants. So, yeah, maybe that was the main issue with Ugin. And you also see that Ulamog's coming up, but that's going to exile 2 permanents. Maybe you don't want it to be a Detention Sphere.
Here it is.
Yeah, Alexander.
Land number 10.
He just plays land.
4, 7, 8, 9, and there's one more for 10, and there it is, the good old-fashioned way. And there's a trigger on the stack. He says, I'd like to target these 2 lands you've got.
Yeah, and this is like kind of the danger with
wow.
Negate doesn't stop Ulamog. So if Bryan was going to go for Sphinx's Revelation, I think he needed to commit to that plan. He would have gained a life. It would have been really close, though.
Yeah, this is really interesting now because now he's going to go for the Sphinx's Revelation. He floated the mana off the 2 lands that got exiled, cracked a fetch to get another one. He'll be able to rev for 4, like we were talking about for last turn. But he's got his hands full now. He's got fewer lands to work with, and he needs to answer both of these threats because they're both actually lethal.
Yeah.
One of them we know he has a clean answer for with that Detention Sphere. And then I believe he also has a sweeper in his hand, but I don't think he can cast both with his mana this way.
No. I can kind of see where Bryan's line was coming from now. His plan was to Detention Sphere the Ulamog and hope to draw into Snapcaster or Path to Exile to deal with the World Breaker, or you could reverse it. It depends what you're more worried about coming back. But yeah, here I can see what Bryan's line was. Unfortunately, he didn't draw a Snapcaster or Path. Yeah, so and you
wow.
Can
and his mana's kind of jammed up here now.
Well, I mean that's what happens when you get triple Stone Range.
Yeah.
Alexander just played lands. That's a totally fine plan, and this is why Spreading Seas and Field of Ruin are great cards against Tron. You do at some point though need to do something.
This is Serum Visions, and this is somewhat desperate here from him. He's going to bottom both of these, but is he even getting a chance to see those? What did he find?
It looks like it was a land, Field of Ruin.
And he's just going to have to cast in their Serum Visions. What can he even find at this point?
Path to Exile. That is a literal one of the 2 paths.
And he just didn't find anything, and Alexander Corwith just patiently wins game 1, even though Bryan kind of got to enact his game plan. The one missing piece, though, was he did need a Jace the Mind Sculptor somewhere in the middle part of that game to really put him over the top, and he couldn't quite find it. And you see, why the Tron decks choose some of the threats that they do choose is that they can get their value even if their cards get countered or something along, dealt with after the fact. And he was able to just grind out enough advantage because if Bryan had his lands there, he would have been okay.
Yeah, I mean...
He could have cast Detention Sphere plus Supreme Verdict and had an empty board.
Yeah, the fact that the World Breaker and the Ulamog kind of dealt with Bryan's mana base, that was really powerful. And you can see why you would prefer Mono Green Tron, the ability to fetch out more basics. The usual black-green versions ran 2 or free, so if one of those had been in hand, it would have been a disaster. But, I mean, to be fair, Bryan was not putting pressure. Alexander just hit his land drop every turn. He wasn't doing anything fancy. It was just land, land, land. Okay, well, I'll cast this 7 drop. I'll cast this 8 drop. I'll cast this 10 drop. Look, I'm going to be honest. If your opponent plays 10 lands in a row and then casts an Ulamog for 10 mana with 10 lands, I am totally fine with that player winning the game. That is a problem on you for not putting pressure. So it's one thing to criticize Tron when it gets Tron naturally and turn free, but if you can't disrupt your opponent, if you can't kill your opponent when they're going natural 10 mana kill you, then you probably need to try to get a tiny bit on the aggression dial.
We were looking earlier, by the way, when we watched Bryan play, and one of the key top decks that he had to win his match against Affinity was Settle the Wreckage. He has one of those in the main. Yeah. That would have also been a fine pickup with this.
Right. Cryptic Command would have been okay. Yeah. There were a few pickups. He just didn't get any, and that was kind of it. Also, Gideon Juror off the first one would have been okay.
Yeah.
But,
Tap me. Yeah.
Exactly. I think, though, it's just a question, when you not Sphinxing's Revelation there was really awkward. You basically spend your turn, like with 7 mana, you went negate nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, but you can understand Brian's standpoint there, right? Like, you see your opponent tap 8 mana and put Ugin on the stack. You're thinking, I've got a negate in my hand. I have to negate it. But you're saying if he would have thought that line of play through further, he actually could have just dealt with the Ugin and gotten all those cards off with the Sphinx's Rev.
Right, or he could have committed to the Detention Sphere. He knew about the Ulamog, though, so I understand why you wouldn't want to commit to the Detention Sphere there and like let the World Breaker come back. But if you get rid of the World Breaker, it's not that horrible for you if the Detention Sphere comes back.
They don't get the trigger again.
Right, so at that point
Just a big dumb 5/7.
Exactly. So at that point, maybe the line was Detention Sphere, the World Breaker, negate like a No Stone or a Nugan, and then on that next turn, Sphinx's Rev when Ulamog comes down, and then you have a shot. Yeah. But because like he took 5 extra damage, it probably wouldn't have mattered if he had no way to deal with it, but he could have, then he wouldn't have had Detention Sphere, so he probably still lost the game, but yeah. You could have also Jace Plus, but that's really awkward.
Yeah.
Minus, bounce the creature.
Right.
But yeah, to kind of set the stage for the post-board games, we're definitely going to see Alexander boarding in his Thought-Knot Seers and Fractusks because they're pretty good against the Mana Denial plan, since the Mana Denial plan is more preventing the Tron deck for jumping mana, but it doesn't prevent it from getting to 4 or 5. So Alexander probably going to keep the basic force until he can cast that Thought-Knot Seer, that Fractus comfortably. As for Bryan, he's probably going to shave some paths. You still want to keep a little bit because Wormcoil is still a thing. You know Alexander's going to keep it. You know he's probably going to board in Thought-Knot Seers. So I like shaving a lot of the subpar cards. Something like Settle the Wreckage isn't very good. Supreme Verdict also, even though they're boarding in creatures a bit weak, you prefer the paths on average. Even though it gives them a land, the cheap effect with a Planeswalker is pretty powerful. I think we're going to see Crucible Worlds come in, though. Crucible Worlds plus Ghost Quarter, that actually strip mines your opponents.
And we did see Bryan able to get to that sort of strip mine mode on the Ghost Quarter where he ran Alexander out of basics in that game. And imagine just doing that repetitively for the rest of the game. That could just be a lock.
Yeah, if Bryan can get Crucible plus Field of Ruin or Ghost Quarter, and basically then Alexander's always at land parity or goes down, and then from there he can't catch up.
Yep.
And that's where Bryan
we saw. I mean, he ended up hitting 10 land drops and casting Ulamog.
Look, I'm going to go there. I'm going to get there.
This is game plan for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this Tron deck doesn't have a lot else to do. It's not like he can just be super flexible. So I bet you we're going to see a Spreading Seas right here from Bryan. No, I'm wrong. It's Search for Azcanta. He wants to get that online quicker because he knows that there's nothing devastating that can happen this turn. And Search absolutely gives him a benefit going forward. And look at this, natural Tron, or maybe even not. But he's going to get Tron on turn 3 as Alexander. So Bryan's going to have to disrupt this.
Yeah, but Bryan has really good recognition here. He'd rather filter his draw because he understands that like Alexander can't play 2 Tron pieces in 1 turn. So you might as well like improve your draw, especially because it seems like Bryan didn't have an additional land, so that increases his chances of getting a land drop. But I think it's better sequencing on average. So I like that sequencing a lot from Bryan. Another card I haven't mentioned that Bryan might board in is Vendilion Clique. That has disruption, plus it solves the pressure problem we saw in game 1.
Yeah, that would have been another great card in the middle part of that game when he kind of had the board completely stalled. Interesting. I have a strategic question for you, Eduardo.
Sure.
So Bryan has Spreading Seas, and he sees a power plant and a tower.
Yes.
Is there any strategic decision between which one you take out?
So,
he hasn't seen his hand.
So that's actually an interesting question.
I'm really good at asking interesting questions.
The argument is the best argument I saw is you don't want the Urza's Tower to be the last land. And the rationale for that is that if they use the first 2 lands, Power Plant and Mine, to do like Expedition Map or Crack a Star and Scrying, then the tower produces 1 extra mana as the last one, which might be that mana you need to cast an Oblivion Stone that turn. So the best logic I had is tower should be the land you target the least, unless your plan is to kill all 4 towers.
Okay.
But it doesn't matter which 4 you kill. So usually, that's actually a really interesting thing that I didn't realize for years, but eventually someone pointed that out to me. I can't remember who, sorry for the lack of accreditation there. It is better to go after the power plants and mines because you don't want the tower to be the last piece because that's more mana. So, yeah. That said, if you're going to start targeting a land, I like targeting the same one because you could easily get into a situation with 4 fields, a Ghost Quarter, to where you get rid of all 4 of those.
Yep.
So I like choosing one and sticking with it, but I would rather get power plant than tower.
Now let's take a look at where we're at here, because this got kind of interesting. Alexander actually resolved an Oblivion Stone here, which looks pretty threatening, right? It unlocks the Spreading Seas, and it takes out the Search for Escanta if that thing doesn't get transformed before Alexander pops it. And it does put a little bit of a concern here on Bryan.
Yeah.
Now, this Ghost Quarter is going to help slow down even further, but still, he gets to replace that land with a forest. He's going to, if he makes his land drop here, he'll have 4 lands, 1 away from cracking that Oblivion Stone. That said, the Ghost Quarter does add yet another card, putting 5 in the graveyard for Bryan, so he is pretty close to getting that Search transformed.
Yeah, he wants to transform before Oblivion Stone is active. Bryan doing this on upkeep so that Alexander can't get 4 mana there. Interestingly, I might have targeted the power plant there again.
Not the other tower. Because now, I mean, you said unless you're just planning on getting all the towers, that might be his plan.
Right, but the problem here is Oblivion Stone exists. Bryan may not have an answer to it. And the Spreading Seas on tower could get cracked. And at that point, you just unlocked your opponent's tower. So if you leave your opponent with 2 towers, cracking the stone doesn't get Alexander closer to Tron.
Yep.
But by doing so, you can see it here. He has Tron minus the Spreading Seas, but all he has to do to get Tron is crack the stone. It's not hard.
Right. 1 more land and he can do it.
Right. And like now, the Spreading Seas in Bryan's hand is just not going to do the job. He has a detention sphere. He's pretty much locked to getting that Oblivion Stone because otherwise, unless he believes that Alexander has literally no lands. But I think losing to the last Tron piece is one thing. It's another to lose to literally any land in the deck. So I think I would like the Detention Sphere here. Unfortunately, Alexander has the other tower in hand. Although, also, funnily enough, he had the other power plant in hand. So kind of no matter what happens.
He had it all.
Just has it all, yeah.
Well, Bryan has decided just to pass the turn back.
Right.
He's land light, and it's not looking good for a white-blue control player. Alexander Corwith looking pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah, I like Alexander here cracking the stone.
Yeah, he has Tron now beside it, like you said, but
just getting rid of that search as well. Like that search would have been a land, and Bryan, like just landlock Bryan if you can.
Absolutely.
It's just free in the process.
And there's a Thrag Tusk as well. He's also got a colorless floating for a star. I think we're going to see a Logic Knot here, though.
Yeah, I think you're kind of forced to Logic Knot here. Fractus is actually a pretty annoying thread once it's in play.
It really is, yeah.
And I know there are bigger things that could come, but I think Bryan's a little on back foot. However, in Bryan's favor, he could Logic Knock this Fractusk and then Spreading Seas the Mine.
The Mine, yeah.
If he can identify that the Mine is the land he wants to target, I can't remember if the power plant in Alexander's hand was visible or not.
I don't know either.
Yeah, but usually I like to target the land that came in later, like the Mine, because they are much less likely to have 2 mines than just having 1 if it's the second one they play.
Celestial Colonnade was a draw step for Bryan, so he is going to hit a land drop this turn.
Yeah.
And like you said, he's really under a lot of mana pressure here, so that Spreading Seas seems like the thing to do, though. He may want to hold off on playing his land, but either way.
If he has a counter spell that's not conditional, a negate, for example, then I can see him passing. But I would really like to see Spreading Seas on Urza's Mind. Otherwise, you're behind. You have to take a little more risk. If your opponent, though, has a search effect, so tapping the Spreading Seas Mine.
Well, he did not have an unconditional counter, but he has a Vendilion Click, and he has to hope that Alexander is very threat light here, and he is. He's got Ancient Stirrings and a bunch of lands, but he gets to draw a card from the click and play an Ancient Stirrings. This could go very poorly for Bryan.
Yeah, and there's another card from the Sphere. So this is, I don't necessarily like this.
This is risky business.
Yeah, and it's not hard for Alexander to cast any threat here. So I'm not the biggest fan of this line. It could pay off.
Did he draw his card from the click?
It's really hard to observe because those actions tend to occur extremely quickly. But I see a Sphere and a Fractus.
That Thrag Tusk must have been what he drew from the click.
Yeah, he probably just put it on the side and then didn't pay attention because he knows he's going to cast Stirrings.
Exactly.
Kind of no matter what. That said, I'm a bit surprised he went Forest crack the Sphere. I think you would crack a power plant most likely here just because you never know if you need access to that extra green mana.
Yeah, I mean, Bryan's going to feel relieved that the click took out Ulamog, but here's Karn.
Right, but if he had targeted the mine, the Spreading Seas would have also done the same job preemptively.
Yes.
So that's why I kind of liked it there, is you're behind, and it's very... I mean, you're hoping that Alexander has only one threat and doesn't have a way to get another one. While if he's Spreading Seas, he has to get the literal card Urza's Mine, which does cost him some mana, so he needs some mana plus the threat. Because he'll only have access to 6 mana with a Spreading Seas. So he has to lose at least 2.
Man.
And then what is he casting?
Bryan is just he just cannot seem to hit these land drops. If he had hit one here, he'd be in really good shape. As he has an answer for Karn.
Well,
he's going to just spin the wheel here and hope to hit a land. He needs an untapped land here.
Oh, my God.
Well, it's in the gate.
That's not really helping in the face of
it's really not.
Karn liberated.
No.
Yeah, and here Alexander can decide if he wants to cash in Karn for basically turning Karn into the most supreme of Seething Song / Dark Rituals, or just plus it and keep it around and do that a little later. I like the plus here. You have access to 7 mana, which is amazing anyways. Yeah, and yeah. Bryan missing a land drop was basically his death knell because it meant that he couldn't deal with Alexander's game plan conveniently enough.
Yeah, that was it. And that's, of course, another power plant for Alex. So he, once again, has Tron back online, and he's just digging for threats at this point.
Yeah, I mean, we're just seeing this, the decks. You can see why Tron is so powerful once it has his mana. It's like
it's just a bunch of through his library.
Right, it's just a bunch of cards.
What is going on here?
What's the Storm card, Master?
Yeah, no kidding. Is he going to storm him out?
Probably not.
Okay.
Sorry for Storm fans out there.
Yeah.
He actually only has a Fractus because I say only. There's still a Karn.
Yeah, there's still a Karn, and now that this situation's getting worse and worse. Alex also found a Sanctum of Ugin.
Ooh, I like this.
Disdainful Stroke.
Yeah, Tower taps to counter Mana Leak.
Yes, that is a beating. That Mana Leak in hand does not look good. But this is getting kind of interesting because Bryan actually has the answer for Karn in hand with Detention Sphere. And he can take care of Karn and cross his fingers that Alex is just out of gas.
Yeah, and Alexander is out of gas.
Right, he needs to find something.
Yeah, I mean...
His hand is like Sylvan Scrying.
Yeah, you can't let this Karn
Sanctum.
go further. We're done.
No.
We're done. Like, you got to... I mean...
Yeah, you got to take care of it.
Yeah, the problem here is if Bryan doesn't, Alexander can just get rid of one of Bryan's lands, and then Bryan is hoping to top deck a land. So that's why I like the Detention Sphere. It's very risky, of course, but you saw Alexander spin his wheels and go for Frastus. He would have gone for, like, probably something else had he had the opportunity.
Yeah, he had enough mana to cycle a bunch of those stars and still cast something quite large, and he didn't. So, Bryan, this is a hold the baby moment. He is going to be crossing his fingers and hoping that Alex just doesn't untap and slam some, 10-mana monster. What do you see here, Eduardo?
Gear Reach Sanctum. So the Eldrazi Tron decks usually run Seagate Wreckage, I believe.
Yeah.
But this one works when you have cards in hand, which the Tron deck is more likely to have. They usually don't run out of steam that much because they have a lot more expensive cards. This one makes both players draw a card.
And just they loot.
Yes, it's basically Desolate Lighthouse, but for both players.
Exactly.
However, one of these players is drawing into Ulamogs, and the other is drawing into something that probably isn't as good as Ulamog.
Right. But as it stands out, he did not draw into anything, and he passes the turn back to Bryan. Oh, boy, could he scrap back into this thing? Well, it still feels unlikely.
Oh, my God, another land. The looting is really helping Alexander. I mean, imagine this. This would have been, each of these land drops would have been a turn of nothing. But because Alexander is churning through this Gyre Reach Sanctum, we're basically going...
Sanitarium.
Sanitarium,
yep.
My apologies.
No problem.
Only crazy people use it.
By the way, that was Thought Not Seer.
Yeah, good.
So he has something to play here.
Yeah, I like this Thought Not Seer, like a mid-range threat.
I mean, any threat. If you're sitting in Alex's seat, right? He's like, come on, I've got 100 mana. And there it is, Cryptic Command to counter draw, and Bryan is still fighting. By the way, what does a win look like from Bryan's perspective here?
A lot more of this, drawing garbage from Alexander's side. And the problem is that Sanitarium is symmetrical. It means that Bryan is also drawing into more cards. Alexander does eventually need to get a card like that Ulamog, because that card will deal with 2 of Bryan's lands or the Detention Sphere plus Colonnade.
Oops.
And then, yeah, Karn comes back. Good times roll.
Yeah, I mean, he just found Ulamog, so this is going to be extremely difficult for Bryan.
Yeah, Bryan would really like that second Vendilion Clique. I feel the Ruin here is looking semi-optimistic, but you can get the power plant.
He can take the power plant, and that does take him off of Tron.
Yeah, but Alexander still has access to 9 mana.
He does. Yeah, I think he's out of 4, so we thought he had 2, right?
No. So Alexander is running 4. It's just in game
gotcha.
1, he had 2 in hand.
He had 2 in hand.
And 2 in play.
I see.
It was actually just unfortunate. But yeah. The question
so it still leaves him on 9 mana.
Yeah.
1 away from the big boy.
Yeah, well, yeah, and he just has the land in hand. So as long as Alexander has, and he has access to a Sylvan Scrying in hand, which he's kept just in case this scenario happens with Field of Ruin.
Yeah.
So Alexander will easily be able to get there.
How does Bryan come back at this point?
He runs the negate on the Sylvan Scrying, and then he starts drawing that Crucible and goes to town. That's how Bryan wins this game. He can't let Alexander cast that Ulamog realistically because, I mean, Karn is back. That's double Stone Rain plus Karn and Ulamog. That's probably a little too much pressure. Bryan can deal with the Ulamog with Path to Exile, but then the Karn is a problem. Yeah. I mean, Alexander was discarding a lot of the forests earlier.
Are they gone? Because
yeah, he was discarding them to the Sanitarium.
Battlefield. Okay.
So he just didn't have them.
Okay, so that actually did take him off of a land. So, yeah, he's going to have to use it on the...
Yeah. The second Vendilion Clique here is perfect. Plus counter backup. This is amazing. You got rid of the Ulamog, which would have been a threat at some point.
Sooner than later, probably.
Right, and you put pressure. I like this a lot. So now the question is, do you negate this? Do you believe that Alexander has another threat, or do you keep that negate for an Oblivion Stone or a Ugin?
Yeah.
And I think with the Clique, I am happy with the Scrying resolving. I think without the Clique, Bryan would have been kind of forced play to negate the Scrying since he knows that Ulamog would have come.
This has been a great game.
Yeah, I mean, Bryan can take this down.
How, though? I want to know what the win actually looks like.
Sure,
you said before Alex has to keep bricking. Okay, fair enough. But what does Bryan do to win?
Bryan puts a tiny bit of pressure for 2 or 3 turns with that Clique.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually manages to get down.
Ooh, that was Karn.
Karn?
Yep.
Karn is dealable. The
He's
negate.
got the negate.
That was why you didn't see the negate.
Yes.
That was good recognition. Bryan at some point needs a Planeswalker or something big to kind of swing the race.
He does have active Colonnade now as well. He could.
Many, in fact.
Yes.
I think here, if Bryan's hand is action light, which actually kind of is because there's only 2. You're going to be swinging for 7 here, and you're going to hope to get there.
Just 3-turn clock your opponent.
Yeah.
But we know this mono-green Tron deck has the ability to find its threats quite effectively, but it needs to do so. No more searching for Alexander Corwith. He just needs to either top deck one or find one of his ways to search the top cards of his library, like Ancient Stirrings.
Yeah, and I mean, the good news for Tron fans out there, heartless as you may be, is that is that you're very likely to get there. I mean, Alexander's breaking hard. This is like sub 5%.
He's also looting every turn with the Sanitarium. This is just
this is sub. This is sub.
Oh, that was a Stirrings.
Yeah, I mean at this point, like Alexander bricking is way less likely than him getting something finally.
There's a Karn at the minimum.
Oh,
he also got an Oblivion Stone, which could get him a Karn back and kill the Clique.
Let's see. Since Alexander doesn't seem to have Tron, I like the Stone. There's a power plant hidden somewhere there, right?
Yes.
Okay.
He does.
I still like the Stone here because it gets rid of the Spreading Seas on top, and you can get a Karn. So
you just do it now, right?
Yeah, the Stone is better. It deals with Clique. It deals with the...
Yeah, it's great.
Like, you want to deal with Sphere, but it gets Clique and Seas as a bonus, and now you have Karn. Here, I think I would like to see Karn be plussed since Colonnade can take it out. And you're at 13 life, so you have time.
Yep, I like that too. It ends up exiling a Path to Exile. And this one is slipping away quickly. Bryan has done a great job of fighting the fight here, but Alex has really been ahead for most of this game. It was Gideon for Bryan off the top. Does that do anything here?
It removes free loyalty Karnos from Karn Liberated.
Yeah, not a lot.
That's what it reads.
Not a lot.
The Colonnade here could kill Karn over 2 turns with Gideon. If Bryan had access to another land, he could go Colonnade, put Karn to 6, play Gideon, Karn minuses, and then Colonnade finishes off
it.
the Karn.
Okay.
But Alexander should be getting pressure. And yeah, with the land here, I think that's kind of the line, but you're so far behind.
Yeah, this is getting desperate times here for Bryan Rockenbach. He's at 11-1 with white-blue control. He can take a loss here and still have a decent shot of winning his next 2 rounds and making it into the top 8. Alex Corwith with the win here would be 12-1 and looking to be in beautiful shape for the top 8. We're in MTG Red Zone here in Phoenix, and we're down to our top 2 players. This is Bryan activating his Celestial Colonnade to try to put some pressure onto Karn Liberated, but we know how difficult this is given Karn's extremely high loyalty bump on the +4. Karn was just at 10, knocked down to 6, but can easily be right back at 10. And here's getting to the trials.
He's trying to figure out if he wants a Gideon Emblem or plus.
Yeah,
I guess you might as well technically make the emblem here as non-existing additional value rather than plussing for non-existing additional value. But it's all pretty moot. Yeah. Here, at least Bryan's out of cards.
How about Emrakul?
Oh, that's pretty good. I say it's pretty good, though, but this is actually the one spot where Emrakul is not at its best. The spot where they don't have any cards and there's only so much you can do. I think I'm trying to remember the text on Field of Ruin, but I believe it can only target a land your opponent controls.
Double check that for you.
Sure.
But that I'm pretty sure that is the case.
Right. So, and Gideon prevents all damage. There's actually not much damage that Alexander can do to Bryan, with the exception...
Unopponent control.
Sure. There's not much damage that Alexander can do to Bryan. So Emrakul is basically a 13-13 with the drawback of making your opponent draw a card. But it kills the Colonnade, since the Colonnade would run into the Emrakul, the Promised End.
Yeah, it's still not bad.
Yeah, you still
Also,
do
you get a 13-13 trampler out of the deal. That's not...
Yeah, that's where you kind of want to be.
It's not a bad...
Yeah, just checking for card types and all that. But actually, with all this tap-out business... Oh, he has enough mana. He just tapped the towers and then was checking on...
Oh, and he also gets to trigger Sanctum here?
Oh, that's super powerful, yeah.
Oh, boy. Alexander Corwith is now running away with this game. Bryan Rockenbach is going to have to pick up his second loss here.
Most likely.
I'd like to see you come out with the way that Bryan wins this game. And that's what I would do, too.
I'll move on.
Is pick up my permanence.
And go to get lunch.
And, yes, that is Alexander Corwith picking up the win. And, again, he's going to be a 12-1 now and in fantastic shape for the top 8. There's a good chance we're going to see mono green Tron in the top 8 here in Phoenix. Welcome back to the booth. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe. That is Eduardo Sechgalik, and we're bringing you MTG Red Zone here from Phoenix. We've got a couple more rounds before we cut to our top 8 and Sunday Night Magic. We're going to take a short break. We'll see you right after that. there. Welcome back to the booth here at GP Phoenix. We've got Time Walk Magic lined up for you, and I love this matchup. My favorite deck in the format, Emrakul Breach, playing against Smallpox. Let's find out what happens. Could be a pretty cool matchup here for Time Walk. So walk us through this Smallpox deck here.
Sure. So the Smallpox deck tries to get as much value out of the disease that plagued 18th century civilization.
Trying to turn a negative into a positive here.
Right. So
Okay.
so like it uses the spirits of lingering souls as a way to, when you discard the card, it's pretty good. And also tokens. You can see Flagstones of Troke here. So basically, it's a very thematic deck. You're using the Souls of the Departed, Liliana of the Veil. It's very necrotic deck in that sense.
By the way, Smallpox, I'm going to read it for people that haven't seen it. It's black sorcery. Each player loses a life, discards a card, sacks a creature, and sacks a land.
Yes.
Pretty powerful stuff, especially if you can kind of throw that symmetry off a bit.
Exactly. Flagstones of Troke here, legendary land. When it goes to the graveyard, it produces white. When it goes to the graveyard, you can search your library for a plains. So
And put
essentially,
it onto the battlefield. Yep.
Yep, seems like a good card to sacrifice to Smallpox. You can combine it with Urborg to make it on turn 2 for the nut draw. The creatures you sacrifice are some generated tokens like this Fairy Rogue, so you don't mind.
Yeah,
And
we're gonna so we're gonna see Inquisition of Kozilek here from Jose. Kyle says no, sir. He's gonna use Izzet Charm to counter it, and of course the Blue Moon Emrakul Breach deck on the other side is a sort of a traditional blue-red control shell, but it has these sort of two hammers that it can throw at you. One of them is Blood Moon, which can, wreak havoc with opposing mana bases and buy you a lot of time. And then the other one, of course, is Through the Breach, putting an Emrakul, the Aeon's Torn, into play to attack you for 15 and force you to sacrifice 6 permanents, which is often good enough for the win. This deck also has picked up Jace the Mind Sculptor as an alternate win condition, a way to find the combo pieces, a good mid-range play, and we see 2 in the list here, which has become kind of the standard for this. So this is sweet.
yeah, well, one thing you might have missed there that was actually pretty relevant, Jose Daniel essentially played his land after the Izzet Charm, which allowed the Inquisition to be countered. But the reason he did that was most likely because the Blue Moon lists run more a 4 of Remand.
Yes.
So he was maybe baiting out a Remand in the style of, I don't have black mana, so if you Remand this, I might not be able to recast it. So that's why you see him running into that Izzet Charm and not playing the land, I believe.
I think you're absolutely right. Not all of them play Izzet Charm, and if they do, they play fewer. I mean, Remand's one of the best cards in the Blue Moon deck, where Izzet Charm is considered optional. You don't even have to run it. If you do, they usually run like 1 or 2.
Right, exactly. So that was what Jose Daniel, I believe, was doing. So it might look really sheepish here, like, oh man, he didn't play his land into like a Spell Pierce effect. That looks terrible.
The Shame land?
Right.
But no, it wasn't. You're absolutely correct. Everybody plays 4 Remand in these Blue Moon decks.
Right, so incentivizing the Remand on an Inquisition is great because you make them draw the card right away, you get more information. It's really, I actually like the sequencing, though it didn't really pan out.
Speaking of information, Kyle Miller's actually going to run out Vendilion Click and target himself. He's clearly digging for probably land drops is the most likely thing, but we're going to see a steady march up to 4 and then 5 lands. That 5th land means that he is in range to just put Emrakul into play, and that's a major issue for Jose, as he's not going to have any answers for that. So we see land number 4. Are we going to see Jace the Mind Sculptor? Maybe just Cryptic Command available?
We're actually going to see Jace here.
Yeah!
But good recognition from Kyle here. The Remand is going to have low value, and essentially here, Kyle is trying to dig more quickly to his combo, plus dealing some incidental damage to Jose Daniel is actually pretty nice here.
It really is. Remember, the Blue Moon deck also has access to cards like Snapcaster Mage and 4 Lightning Bolt. Well, so, Bitter Blossom becomes a major issue when your opponent's sitting there with 6 damage or, God forbid, 9 damage available to them in their hand.
Right. This incidental damage is very relevant. One thing, though, that Kyle should have maybe thought about a little more, this Shambling Vent is in play.
Yeah, he's going to lose Jace here.
Right, and then Jose Daniel doesn't have to attack with either token. Electrolyze can get rid of both, but it's not a very common card. If it is, it's only a 1 or 2 of. And can essentially just swing in with that Shambling Vent into the Jace. Obviously, Kyle could combo off.
Right, so that's the thing that that Jose has to consider. If he just fires up the Shambling Vent and attacks, he's unlikely to have much else to do this turn. And Kyle says, cool, land take 15, you're dead. Or, wipe your entire board.
Yeah.
What is that, a fatal push?
Yeah, might as well. Okay, so with the fatal push, you could attack, but Jose Daniel's taking the opportunity here to do everything. Put a Planeswalker and kill the Jace.
Right, so this is Storm Solemn Visitor. That's right, and you can use Storm Solemn Visitor to give all your creatures +1/+0 until your next turn plus lifelink.
Yes.
And that's enough to have just the remaining token finish off Jace the Mind Sculptor. So a big turn there for Jose. Are we going to see the combo here from Kyle? Now, he does have a game plan kind of disrupted here of trying to just burn out Jose thanks to Storm Solemn Visitor. So he's really got some issues here. He does not have the combo either.
Yeah, the combo here, this turn it would have been pretty strong since there weren't that many permanents on Jose Daniel's side, but it's going to start being worse.
Yep.
Essentially, that Bitter Blossom is turning an extra permanent every turn, and we're going to be in a very realistic situation where Kyle could have Through the Breach plus Emrakul, and it is an irrelevant combo.
Yeah.
Essentially, at that point, Jose Daniel would be able to sack a bunch of Fairy Rogues. Maybe in that Bitter Blossom, the Flagstones would go, 1 or 2 excess lands as well. Chump block the Emrakul. Kyle used 2 cards, did nothing, and Jose Daniel just keeps on like not much happened.
That's right.
But yeah, I think here Jose Daniel's very ahead.
Yeah, we're going to see Cryptic Command here.
Yeah. Basically, Kyle has 2 Lightning Bolts in hand, so he's going to try to Lightning Bolt, Snapcaster Bolt.
Yeah,
I believe he has 2.
He found an opt. It's a little awkward for him because he's crimped on red mana. He just has the 1 Steam Vents, but he searched up a basic island. That's something that you'll see these players do quite often because of Blood Moon.
Yeah, and Blood Moon.
And that was interesting too. So Jose actually fired up the the Shambling Vent there. That was after the Cryptic Resolve, but still before combat, and that opened it up to a Lightning Bolt. So that means that Kyle doesn't get to fire it off at the face.
Yeah, and that's the problem. Now that Kyle can't really, because of Storm Solemn Visitor's ability, he can't really race it, as you mentioned earlier, Marshall.
Mm-hmm.
So at this point, Kyle is basically, well, and this is why this deck has a much bigger weakness than Splinter Twin had back in the day. Splinter Twin could win from almost any board state, barring anti-cards or something like a Soul Warden.
Why do you always have to bring this up, Eduardo? It's like, I know it's bad, Splinter Twin.
Right, but I'm bringing it up here because it is relevant.
My feelings here.
I know, but it is relevant here.
I'm teasing you. Of course you're correct.
And when I tried the deck, that's what happened. I would be like, well, I have the combo, but it's not enough.
But it wasn't quite enough to win.
My opponent can chump with Birds of Paradise and kill me with this, like, persistent Kitchen Finks.
Yeah.
Then I was off it.
I have done that. I've had that happen to me, too.
Right.
Where with Splinter Twin, you were dealing with the ability to turn 3 into turn 4. It was not a kind of thing that if it went off that they could beat. Here's Lingering Souls, by the way, from Jose. And that's going to draw a Remand from Kyle.
Might as well. One of the more expensive cards left in the deck from Jose.
Yeah, and I think he just wants to see what else he can get.
Yeah, you need to cycle and get there. Also, it probably was very close to lethal between the Fairy Tokens, the
Spirits, and
the Shambling Vents, yeah.
Here's Smallpox. This does do the good job of taking away a land from Miller, which could be relevant. He's going to opt in response.
No, I think
I'm sorry. He's going to Spell Snare.
Yeah, he does have the opt too, so he'll probably Spell Snare then opt.
Yeah.
I guess you could sequence it differently.
Sure.
I would have probably have liked the opt first. It hides a tiny bit of information, not much, but
sure.
You're clearly going to Spell Snare this.
Ooh.
Yeah,
hello.
for the breach. But
Through the breach.
But Jose Daniel at this point should have a good recognition as to the deck he's facing. The 4 base.
Ooh, he's going for it. He's going to try to find Emrakul right here.
Yeah, so that was where Daniel should have stopped for a second and figured out how he could lose this game that he's so far ahead in, and that was one of the ways, that combo of Emrakul for the breach. So probably Jose Daniel should not have attacked with both Fairy Rogues. One would have been sufficient here.
Yes, exactly. But so Kyle did in fact use a Lightning Bolt just to take one of them down, but he did not find the other part of his combo, an Emrakul, the Eon's Torn. And now things are looking darn good here for Jose Daniel, though. That being said, Kyle did find himself a Snapcaster Mage.
Yeah. Yeah, actually what I would really like to see Jose Daniel do would have been casting that. I don't know if it was what he did last turn, so apologies if he did, but a cast of Lingering Souls pre-combat. Then if it resolves, you can go in, but obviously that runs into Cryptic, so that's a lot harder.
Here's the beginning of the trials now for Jose. Yeah. He is so far ahead. He actually could ultimate Sorin if he wanted the last couple of turns, but its ultimate's not super good against Kyle. It says you get an emblem with at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, they sack a creature.
It's not very relevant.
Right. It doesn't really do much. So he's actually happier just to have it be an Anthem effect where it's plussing his team and making sure he doesn't die to his Bitter Blossom, that kind of stuff. So he just keeps plussing it. You can also -2 Sorin to make a 2/2 vampire with flying at any point.
Yeah, it's not very necessary here, but that could have been like something that Jose Daniel did last turn, to be fair, to make sure he didn't die to the combo. Kyle gave himself the window. Jose Daniel did give Kyle that window, and it just turned out that, he didn't get there. But yeah,
he's going for it again. This is a spot where if he rips Emrakul, he could finish him off, or at least put him back a lot. Yeah, he didn't do it. Also, the problem, of course, is that Jose is at 19 now, so Emrakul's not lethal on its own.
Right, and there's a Gideon of the Trials emblem, so...
Here's another fatal push for Jose. Send a Snapcaster Mage to its doom. And, yeah, Jose just seems to be fully in the driver's seat here. Kyle Miller's trying to scrap out a win and trying to get him, but it's not really working. Yeah,
like the last turn... that turn that happened, Kyle could have drawn an Emrakul. It actually just would not have been relevant. There was that turn where it would have been. That one was not. Jose Daniel being a 19, the Gideon of the Trials emblem. There was just too much going on.
Yep.
So Kyle would have been able to just kill some fairy. It would have acted essentially as a Plague Wind-ish effect, but it wouldn't have been good enough. I think at this point Kyle is going to lose this game.
Yeah, he's going to go to 1 here after chump blocking Gideon, taking down one of the fairies, taking 4 in the air.
Yeah, and he could draw
on his last legs, but it doesn't matter what he rips now.
Yeah, he could draw Emrakul, and it just looks laughable when the fairy rogue is going to chump it.
Yep.
Doesn't even have to chump it. Smallpox.
And Smallpox is also lethal.
Yeah.
Among the other things you lose when Smallpox resolves is a life. So that is game 1 going to Jose Daniel Garcia Rosas, and we're going to move on to game number 2 since we're in time walk.
Yeah, and you see the Kyle Miller kept the Blood Moon in he has it in hand, so he kept it in his deck.
What do you think about that?
It was interesting. I think the Blood Moon is, on average, okay against the White-Black Smallpox deck because they have limited ways to get basics. They only have 4 fetches plus the free basics. I was kind of considering where he would keep it in just because essentially he saw free basics on Jose Daniel's side. He just drew all free or fetched at least 1 potentially. So, but he probably realized, because he understands that Jose Daniel knows he's on Blue Moon, that he would have aggressively gone for fetch basics. So he probably figured those free might be the only ones, and he's aggressively doing so. So the Blood Moon's probably still good.
And we're going to see Remand on a Smallpox here. And, of course, before chat freaks out, there is an Urborg in play.
Yeah.
Oh, here we go. This is a land off the top. So, interestingly, Kyle actually had a 1-lander. He needed to opt into a land. He bottomed, hit Basic Island, which is exactly what he wanted to see. And now he draws Scalding Tarn off the top for another basic. He can slam Blood Moon here and really set Jose back.
Yeah, Jose got a little too cute here.
He could have just cracked that
to get up planes. Yeah. The thing is, like, in his line of thinking, he wanted to sack the Marsh Flats, which is why he went for it. But he should have thought, what is the disaster that could happen? My Smallpox gets countered and a Blood Moon resolved. That's the disaster scenario. So you don't want to run into that disaster. To avoid that, you want to fetch a basic.
Oh, no. He's got Triple Mountain now.
Yeah, so I think Jose Daniel should have considered, what is the line where I lose and how likely it is? And when you think about it, it's like, okay, so my opponent only needs to go Counterspell, which he has quite a few of.
Yes,
into Blood Moon. Okay, I can't. This is too likely. I have to aggressively fetch. I'll keep the Smallpox for later.
Well, we are witnessing maximum punishment now for that oversight from Jose, because he is on 4 mountains in his white-black deck, and now there's a Vendilion Click applying pressure. Serum Vision sitting the stack. I mean, this deck plays a lot of cantrips as well. And here's even more, although that one's just a mountain this time.
I mean, Jose Daniel is down to drawing 1 of 3 basics, and during this time, Kyle, basically, while Jose Daniel doesn't draw 1 of the basics, Kyle is playing Goldfish Magic.
Oh, boy. Here's Chase. Is he going to brainstorm, or is he going to plus?
Oh, he should definitely be plussing here. There's only 3 cards that are relevant in Jose Daniel's deck.
That's what I was thinking, too, but it looks like he's going to just go for the brainstorm. He probably has, like, a Cryptic in his hand, and he wants to hit that last basic or something like that.
I really dislike this line here. I know normally you want to brainstorm with Jay, so I kind of agree on a philosophical perspective. But situationally
you're against it.
Yes.
Yeah, I am too.
Because there's only 3 cards that are relevant, Why are you not transforming your like 98% into 99 plus? I mean, maybe you have Through the Breach Emrakul, you just don't care. I guess that's fine.
Sure. He has it all. So we got to see Jason, Mind Sculptor, Blood Moon, Vendilion Click, Through the Breach, Emrakul, and a Remand. That's exactly how Kyle Miller drew it up when he walked into the building. I love seeing that. Let's see if Jose changes his line of play a little bit here. Well, he's going to opt in response, but this is collective brutality.
Why would you opt there?
I don't know.
Because, like, Jose Daniel, unless it's your only instant or you desperately need a land, is never taking your opt. So you're just giving Jose Daniel more information. You should just leave this opt because there's two reasons for this. The first one is you get to see what he takes so you can act in consequence. And, like, for example, let's say Jose Daniel takes the Cryptic, then you know, like, you're looking for, like, what you're looking for, maybe a free drop or something. Let's say he takes the Negate, then you're like, okay, well, this 2-drop is something I really need. And, like, here he doesn't get that information, so I strongly dislike the opt-in response. I think that's just a fundamental gameplay error. Yeah,
it was probably just a reactionary play there from Kyle, but he is that is not the way to do it because, remember, if he doesn't take the opt, you still get to cast it, right? I think he's just thinking, well, I don't get my opt anymore. So, no, you do. And if he takes your opt, I think you're fine. Like, look at his hand. His hand looks pretty good. So
it's possible he was down to 2 lands and really wanted to hit that 3rd land drop. That would be my line of thinking here.
But that's really aggressive if Jose just says take your opt there.
It's less aggressive than it normally is just because of Smallpox. So that would be the only reason I see the opt. But even then, I think it's a little
We
greedy.
know that's not what happened.
Yeah.
I appreciate your thoroughness, but that's not what we're...
Yeah. Because you have the Negate for next turn. You can get rid of a Smallpox down the line. So I really like just not opting and not giving your opponent that info. Although this Fulminator Mage is pretty sad against basic land dot deck.
Yes, it is. And there's another one. Now, Kyle, interestingly, if he wants, he can go get another island to dodge the Fulminator Mage. Otherwise, he's going to get Steam Vents.
If he's getting Steam Vents here, we're going to see free mana into Blood Moon most likely.
For sure, right.
Yeah, I can't see any other card than Blood Moon here.
Right, so he's going to slam Blood Moon, and then I guess Jose just responds and takes out the vents, or is that not a thing?
He doesn't need... There's no requirement to respond. He can do it later anyways.
It's still a non-basic mountain, right?
Right,
okay.
right.
I mean,
also, yeah.
Well, I mean, you're saying that like it's just obvious. I mean,
oh, sure, sorry.
Right?
Yeah.
Try to keep up with me here, Eduardo.
Sure.
We're on the broadcast now.
It's all good.
But interestingly, he does get to beat down.
Yeah, that was why I liked it. Although... poor recognition from Jose Daniel. If he had that Fulminator last turn, he probably just drew it, though. He can cast it for Blood Moon. It is hybrid black-red mana.
It is indeed. It is something he can cast. And by the way, once again, Kyle Miller, and this is something that this deck does quite often, especially while digging for the combos, target itself with Vendilion Click. Yeah, there's a mountain off the top for Kyle. He's got 4 mana. Tick-tock, right? This is where, if you're in Jose's seat, things start to get very scary.
Yeah, and this was like where you could have considered getting rid of the Steam Vents, that second Fulminator Mage. But the question is, how are you winning this game? And I think Jose Daniel understands, well, I really need the pressure. Yeah, Kyle Fate Seals himself. That's okay. I would have preferred Fate Sealing the opponent. I know he was digging for a land for his combo. But I think we're again in the situation similar to last game where... basically, he's just preventing cards. The only difference is, the main difference as to why Fate Sealing yourself is better here, the Fulminator Mages are a clock, so you do want to hit the land eventually.
Uh-oh, here we go. There's Through the Breach. There's Emrakul.
And there's
this is actually a lethal attack here. 18 damage, and Kyle Miller puts together the combo 2 times out of 3, and that's all you need to win the match here. So he's going to take down the Smallpox deck and improve his record by yet one further. We are in MTG Red Zone here in Phoenix. Thanks so much for joining us for live coverage of Modern. It's nice to have you along. We've got more Time Walk to bring you, by the way. We're not even done yet in this round. That's right, Eduardo. Yeah, grab the other deck list because let's
Teammates on. I got to watch.
Let's see where we're popping in on here. This is game number 3. Vikram Kudva, he's playing against Yamwing Chung.
Yeah.
So you know Yam.
Yeah, he's probably going to be my teammate for... Well, he's definitely my teammate for Grand Prix Kyoto. It's coming up next week. So
and you've teamed with him before for the Pro Tour and stuff, right?
Right. We're on the
testing
same.
team.
We're on the same 6-person Pro Tour team series. So
Yeah.
So I'm definitely going to have a favorite here. So apologies to viewers. The impartiality is totally gone.
You're going to set it aside. All right. Well, I'll be on Team Vikram then.
That's fine. Yeah.
Bant Nightfall against Burn.
Right. So, by the way, for how this matchup plays out, usually these matchups are pretty bad for the Burn deck because they're creature combo based, and the Burn deck has to go to the face enough times and hit players. It can't afford to hit the creatures. Post-board situation gets a lot better because you have access to Searing Blaze and Searing Blood, ways to deal damage while dealing with the permanent in play. Vikram understands that some of the Burn cards are more important than others, so I really like that Vikram boarded in these Unified Wills. Because they're Vikram is more likely to have creatures, and only certain effects are really worth it.
Here's Skullcrack now.
Yeah,
I'm
not sure about Unifying Will this. You don't really care about the Skullcrack effect, especially with Collected Company in hand. What you care about is your creature surviving. So I actually strongly dislike the Skullcrack, because if Yan Wing Chung can draw into a Searing Blood or have the Searing Blaze, then you're set back on mana and you might not be able to cast your Collected Company, and that's how you could lose a game in a favorable matchup. So I actually think the Skullcrack should just have resolved and Vikram should just have untapped, and he would have been in an extremely favorable position. But thankfully,
looks like he got away with it this time.
Yeah, and he drew like a land, so he would have gotten there like every single way possible. But
Does
yeah,
he have another copy of Unified Will in hand?
Yeah, and I believe
his hand is Coco.
Yeah, and I believe Yam mulliganed, but I mean, I guess that's partially because he played free Lava Spike, so that's kind of a mulligan in itself. But yeah, Collected Company here, very powerful.
Let's see what he hits. He's got a bird. Ooh, how about a Devoted Druid and a Spell Queller?
Yeah, so he's actually playing, I believe, 2 combos. He's playing the Vizier Remedies Devoted Druid combo.
Okay.
And he's also playing the Retreat to Coral Helm Knight of the Reliquary combo.
Wow, double combo. I like that.
Yeah, I'm definitely a bigger fan of Vikram's deck, just to be clear. Both in this matchup and in general. But yeah, I think because Yam drew like some of the worst cards in the matchup, not the Searing Blazes, not the Searing Bloods, Vikram is ahead, but he's not, and these Exalted triggers are putting pressure. So yeah, this Skullcrack, you can just see it resolve because Vikram understands it now. Well, I want a Unified Will, like something that kills a creature. That's what I fundamentally care about. Interestingly as well, those Noble Hierarchs and that Devoted Druid are not very good blockers against a top deck creature. So normally in a situation like this, a card like Goblin Guide is not very powerful because they usually have enough creatures to block. But because there's only 0/1s in front, it actually would be okay. Although this is Eidolon of Rhetoric, an interesting sideboard choice. But with Counter Magic and the 1/4 body, it's kind of I actually kind of like this choice. I think it's a more powerful card than like the second or the third Vizier would be, just the blocking aspects of things.
Wow. Yam is really laying it on here. Here's Shard Volley.
Yeah, he's going for essentially top deck Boros Charm with Vikram at 4. 4 life is far infinitely more in a way against a burn deck than 3, just because only 1 card deals 4 damage. And here Yam draws the Searing Blaze. So this is actually an interesting spot. Where do you fire off the Searing Blaze? I kind of, because Vikram has access to higher Keef, Devoted Druid, that's a lot of mana, so you know that he can Spell Queller anyways. So I kind of like the Searing Blaze on upkeep, but you do have to sack the land. Because if it's, I kind of like it actually on attack. That's like the highest upside play. It is a little bit of a gamble, but your opponent's only playing 2 or 3 Unified Wills, and this way you would prevent damage. So unfortunately for Yam, Vikram did draw 2 of the 3 Unified Wills, which is a lot more than average. And yeah,
there's that Searing Blaze that you mentioned before, but this one's going to get countered.
Yeah, and this one, and this is actually a really tight spot. I'm actually wondering if Vikram says okay, but then he loses to any top deck bird spell and is forced to Unified Will it. So I think you're better off chance-wise to counter this.
Is close.
Yeah, to counter the Searing Blaze, because Searing Blood or Blaze don't do it without a land drop. So he needs a Boros Charm and Boros Charm only.
Oh, he tapped his mana. Wait. Yeah.
Is it a Boros Charm?
I would say he would not slow roll him this hard.
No, he probably just...
Okay, it's Rift Bolt.
Yeah, so that gives him...
That does actually keep him alive, does it not?
No, because he's at free life, unfortunately.
Oh, he was at 3, right. And he had the 1/4 attack with 2 Exalted triggers. And that's the match going to Vikram. And he's in good shape at 11-2. Once again, we're just finishing up round number 13 here. A couple more to go in our Swiss portion. And we're going to be bringing you all of that and, of course, the top 8 in just a little while. Don't you go anywhere. We'll be back right after these messages.